Welcome to class PM. The previous class we have studied about the history of the cell, that is the discovery, right? And we have seen few things, we have learned few things about the cell. Now let us do about shape of cells. Shape of cells. As I've told you, we have various organs present in multicellular organisms, right? And there are different cells which are present in every organ, and they are of different size and shape. When we talk about the shape of the cell, let us take an example of the unicellular organism like amoeba, right? So we know that when you look at this picture, amoeba, when I ask you what is the shape of this cell, then you may definitely say that it is irregular. In fact, you see that there are some finger-like projections, right? You can see this finger-like projections which are protruding out of the body, So what are these finger-like projections called? These are called as pseudopodia. What are these called? Pseudopodia. So pseudopodia means a false foot. Okay, pseudopodia means false foot. So now this false foot which is present in this unicellular organism will help it to capture the food. At the same time, it will also help in the locomotion. And you may not see this pseudopodia when it keeps moving. So this is the basic function of having pseudopodia in case of amoeba, that is to capture food and also helps in locomotion. But when you talk about a human WBC, that is white blood cells in the case of human body, they are also single celled, okay? And when you talk about the WBCs, they are also single celled in case of human beings, but they are only a cell. But whereas amoeba is a full-fleshed organism, So now you know that though it is a single cell, it can perform various activities, but whereas being a single cell, WBC can only defend the body, right? There are different cells. From this you might have understood that there are different cells which are confined to different functions. Say like there are different shapes of the cells, or there are different cells which are present in blood, in nerve and muscles, right? There are different shapes of the cells which are present. So from this you might have understood that though it is a full-fleshed organism, it has only a single cell, whereas the WBC, which is only a part of a component, part of an organ, is also a single cell. So when you talk about the different shapes of the cells, there are different shapes of the cells which are found in blood, nerve cells and muscles. So when you talk about red blood cells, you see that the red blood cells are spherical. And when you talk about the nerve, you see that they are usually branched like this. Okay, the nerve cells are usually branched. In case of muscle, you see that few muscle cells are spindle shaped with pointed ends, okay, and few are branched like this. So few are branched in case of muscles. So you find there are different cells and different shapes of the cells in every organ. Say like blood cells are spherical, nerve cells are elongated, right? And few are, in case of muscle cells, they are spindle shaped, right? There are different shapes of cells in which perform different functions of the body. So when you talk about these cells, we know that these nerve cells which are present in the nerves, they are confined to receive, they are confined to receive and transfer the messages to the brain, right? When you talk about the blood cells, these blood cells will only help in the absorption of the food and transportation of the materials in the body, right? So this is how you see that every specific cell, though they have different shapes and sizes, they perform different activities in the body. So we know that. Do you know that which part of the cell gives the shape? See, I've drawn few shapes of the cells, right? I have shown you the spherical shape of a cell, nerve cell, and then you have seen that spindle shaped cell, or you have seen branched cells. So now there might be a question in your mind, like, see, what is that which is giving it a shape? So the components which are present, okay, the substances or the components which are present, they are arranged within a confined space in the cell. Okay, and they are protected inside a membrane. So this cell wall is present in case of plants, which gives it the rigidity or the shape of the cell, At the same time, bacterial cell also has a cell wall. So the cell membrane which is present, it provides the shape to the cell, right? So I've told you that the components of the cell which are present, they're enclosed in a small membrane. A membrane means a covering, right? So this which is present will definitely give the shape to the cell in case of animals and humans. But in case of plants, there is a cell wall which is present around the cell, which will give the rigidity to the cell. That means rigidity means stiffness, strongness, or strength or toughness, right? And at the same time, it will also provide the shape to the cell. Unlike these plant cells, even bacterial cells also have cell wall. So when you talk about the size of the cell, yeah, we have seen the shape of the cell. Now let us talk about size of the cell. Have you ever thought what would be the size of the cell? See, we see various organisms around us. Few people are lean, few people are hefty, few people are very well built, right? Now, will this question not come to in your mind? Like, will all these humans have the same sized cells, or will they have the same size of the cell in the body? Right? See, you may be having a question which is roaming in your mind, like, I have seen a lean person, I have seen a fat person. Will both these person have the same size of the cells in the body? Right? When you talk about this, definitely there comes a question that we need to discuss about the size of the cells in every living organism or living organisms. So the cells may be as small as millionth of a meter. Okay, they are as small as millionth of a meter, and sometimes a few centimeters also. A few centimeters. Okay, you can see that the size of the cell can be as small as a millionth of a meter and sometimes a few centimeters. So we know that most of the cells are microscopic. We cannot see them with unaided eye. Right? So we need to have a microscope to observe the size of the cell. But there are few cells which are actually enlarged, where you can see them with your unaided eye. Say like the smallest cell which is observed under microscope measures 0.1 to 0.5 mm. That is, mm is nothing but micrometer. This is seen in bacteria, that is the smallest cell. We know that most of the cells are microscopic, where we need to put them under a microscope, where the lens of the microscope will magnify it many times so that you can see the size of the cell. So when you talk about the size of the cell, the smallest of all the cells is measures from 0.1 to 0.5 mm, that is micrometer, which is a bacterial cell, In the same time, when you talk about the largest cell which is ever found, which measures about 170 micrometers into 130 micrometers, that is the circumference and the length of the egg, right? So egg of an ostrich is considered to be the the biggest, largest cell. So now, as I've told you, you might have a question like, will both fat and thin living organisms have the same size of the cell? Let me explain it with you an example. When you take an elephant and a rat, the rat and the elephant will have the same sized nerve cells. You know what are nerve cells, right? The function of the nerve cell is to carry the messages to the brain and bring the messages from brain to the body, right? This implies that though the size of the body is different, the size of the cell depends upon the function of the cell, It doesn't depend upon the size of the body. Say like I've told you, the function of the cell should be considered as the basic information to carry out the activities, right? So the size of the body is no way related. So the size of the body may be bigger or a smaller one, but the size of the cell depends upon the function of the cell, So that is how you can give. So as I've told you, both elephant and rat have the same size nerve cells, but the size of the rat is small, whereas the size of the elephant is big. So what did you understand? The size of the body is no way related to the size of the cell. So let us talk about the cell structure and functions. So before I start with cell structure and functions, we know that we have learned digestive system in class 7, right? You have seen that the digestive system is associated with so many parts like stomach and liver and the pancreas and small intestine and the large intestine. So every specific part of the digestive system has a specific function. That means they have specific cells which carry out the specific function, right? So that means they are confined to carry out the function of that particular part. In the same way, when you talk about the plants, in case of plants also there are many cells because it is a multicellular organism. And you see that the roots are confined to absorb the water and nutrients from the soil. Whereas we know that leaves are confined to synthesize the food and store it in the different parts of the plant body. In the same time, we also have seen that the branches and the stems are confined to carry the transport the materials. So every cell is confined to perform a specific function of that particular organ or of that particular part of the body. So when you talk about this, each organ is further made up of smaller parts called tissues. As I've told you, each organ is further confined or made up of a group of cells called as tissues, and these tissues which are present, they perform various activities which are present in the various activities of the cell of an organ. So we have understood that the organ is made up of tissues, and the tissues are again, so let me write the same thing again. Cell develops into tissue. A tissue is nothing but a group of cells performing the same function, and they are present in the organ and they form the organ system, and this organ system which is present will help in development of an individual, that is organism. So the tissues are a group of cells which are performing the same function. So where are they present? They are present in the organs. So what does these organs do? The tissues which are present in the organs are confined. They also have cells. The tissues also have cells. So the cells which are present in the tissues of a particular organ will perform the activity of that organ, right? So that means they only carry out the functions of that particular organ, where it will develop into an organ system. That means the system is so organized. When you're playing a match, like you see that there is a leader all the time who all the time keeps you coordinated and organized so that you can win the match. In the same way, the cells of these organ system are so well coordinated with each other that perform the activities of life and which lead to the development of an organism. Hence, because of these reasons only, the cell is said to be the basic structural unit of life.